Welcome to the Confident Retirement Podcast. Is doing the most important things alone a good idea? How comfy are you with your choices when it comes to life's biggest decisions? What is real peace of mind with financial confidence, and how can you get it? Chris Fleming and Mark Peachy are the founders of LPF Advisors in Sarasota, Florida. On the show, they bring together the best and brightest minds to share with you how to have a more confident financial picture. They empower listeners with simple, common sense and financial wisdom. And now, here are your hosts from LPF Advisors.
Hey, I want to welcome everybody to the Confident Retirement Podcast brought to you by LPF Advisors. I am your host, Chris Fleming, here as always. And today I have the honor of hosting A.Saadeh on the podcast. His self-named law practice based in New Jersey specializes in delivering sound legal counsel and aggressive representation for clients, taking great pride and care guiding them through personal and life-changing matters. Raj, thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yes, it's going to be fun. So I'm sure you have an interesting backstory. Why don't you just kind of briefly walk us through the history of what led you to where you are today?
Sure. I grew up in New Jersey, and I grew up to immigrant parents in a relatively urban part of New Jersey. Thankfully, they enabled me to go to college, and then I went to Penn Law School. And after that, I clerked for a judge in New Jersey who is still my mentor today. After that, I worked for a handful of law firms before kind of realizing I think I could do this, number one, on my own, and number two, probably in a better, more client-focused and a more efficient kind of manner. So I ventured out 9 years ago, started the practice, and thankfully it has grown to where we have 10 employees, and we appear throughout lovely New Jersey. So that's
okay.
Kind of in a nutshell.
So you said two things there that I want to kind of ask you about. So not every attorney decides to go out on their own, right? So you said, one, it was attractive to you to do it on your own. And the second one is you could do it in a better or maybe a more efficient way. So maybe just elaborate on that. Like, what was it did you feel like about you that led you that you wanted to do it on your own? And what were some of the limitations, that you saw that you could improve upon by being able to run your own deal?
Sure. And this, comes from a little bit of personal experience on being on the ground. When you learn how to practice, when you know how to practice, you can do it anywhere. So it's a skill that's very, very transferable, whether I work for someone else, whether I work for the government, or whether I'm self-employed, whatever the case may be. Once I figured that out, I was able to kind of dissect where I was at the time and realized that it was in a good, very successful, very large law firm. It just seemed a little bit more of a machine that needed to be fed as opposed to that needed to do good work. And it did good work. I just think the priority wasn't doing the good work. And I thought I could create something where good work was the priority, and that would lead to internal growth for my operation and me professionally and personally. So I took the gamble, and 9 years ago until now, here's where we are.
Good. Yeah, I like how you said that. I can relate to some of that in my own personal experience too. Different professional service, but definitely same mindset. So if you could go back in time, maybe 9 years, there might be some mistakes or maybe things that you could correct or you wish you could do over. If you could go back 9 years, talk to the younger you, what do you think maybe some advice that you would give that person, something you know now that you wish you knew when you started out?
Yeah, it's actually a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is the name of my law firm. So The name of my law firm is the Law Office of Me, and that's still the name of the firm today. It kind of implies that I am alone, I am on my own, I'm a one-man ship, which is not the case today. It was the case 9 years ago. I did not have the foresight to see where it would go, and to this day, I still get some confusion about other attorneys working with me in the team, a large staff working with me in the team. So if I could go back, I would pick a name that's a little bit more universal. It's still nothing deceptive I'm going to use or misleading. I wouldn't put like Saadeh and partners or Saadeh and associates when I'm alone, but it would be something a little bit that doesn't make it look as small as it was later today.
Yeah, because you can get that question like, well, what's going to happen to my attorney, or what's going to happen who's representing me if something happens to you, even though you have a team that is there that supports you. But I think that's a common thing, especially in law practices where they don't realize where it's going to go.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And, I wish we could go back, but, even going back, even if I had an idea that it could go this route, the fact that I didn't even know if I wanted to go down this route, maybe I wanted to stay small, but either way, that flexibility all would have been a lot easier to execute with a little bit more of a universal name.
Yeah. Okay. So then how did you come to determine the focus of your firm's services? How'd you hone in on that?
Yeah. So when I came out of law school in 2010, it was we were in the recession at the time. So a lot of industries were either gone or drying up. A lot of clients, large institutional clients, were no longer existed anymore. So that impacted the legal landscape and the legal employment landscape universally. So I wanted to be in court. I knew I wanted to do litigation. And I came across my mentor, who I knew at the time, but he explained to me that it's high-level litigation. It's not what you see on TV, number one. And number two, it is recession-proof. So in a high market and a low market, people will always need help with family matters, whether it's, not so good things like divorces, or if it's good things like helping people get married with prenuptial agreements, or even saving marriages.
Yeah.
So, looking into the real intellectual parts of the field, that's where I decided to go into, and that's where we still are primarily.
Okay. Yeah. And we're going to dive in a little bit on a couple of your areas of expertise in a little bit. So I'm curious, is there something that you especially like about your practice right now?
Yeah, I love my team. I can tell you I have a great, great team. There are 5 attorneys on the team. In addition to me, we have 5 staff people as well. They are very diverse in terms of age, in terms of race, gender, socioeconomic background, even geographical, like location. Like everyone is not necessarily in the office in New Jersey. And we work, notwithstanding that diversity, we work extremely well together. We all take the job and our own careers very, very seriously. And it just, together, it just comes together in a beautiful mix that, enables the firm to be successful and enables us to do really good work for our clients. So it's really, really fulfilling.
So Raj, do you think that was by chance or circumstance, or that you were just lucky, or, not that you would necessarily give yourself all the credit, but what would you attribute that to?
So it was attributable primarily to the growth of the firm. As the firm grew, I wasn't irresponsible with, the growth. I didn't, spend it all or anything like that. I wanted to grow the operation and make it more efficient, make it bigger, make it better. So I did that. But then finding the good people is hard. That's and they know
now.
They know that. I tell them that. But once you have them, though, you treat them well, you involve them, and they are good, independent professionals unto themselves. And I certainly can't take credit for them being them, but the team putting it together, I'll take credit for that. But everything else, no.
Okay, that's good. I like that. All right. So let's switch gears a little bit. What would you say is a typical or an ideal client that you serve in your practice?
Sure. An ideal client is one who is responsive, one who takes our advice. A lot of our clients don't listen to a word we say, which is fine. It's their prerogative, it's their lives. Right. It just makes everyone's lives, including their own, a lot easier if they did indeed listen to what we are suggesting to them. An ideal client is one who is realistic, who doesn't necessarily, blame us for the horrible things that happen in the world, that horrible things that are happening in their lives. We certainly didn't cause their divorce. We're not even, encouraging it necessarily. We're just facilitating it based on needs. And then at the end of the day, after the case is over, whether it's by trial or by settlement, it's a thank you very much. Thank you for your service. If they need anything else in the future, which often is the case for family matters, you can modify or you can modify custody. They think of us as well. And even if, they know someone else who might need our help, they also send people our way. That's, if I could summarize a perfect client, that would essentially be it.
Okay. Do you think there's some common misconceptions that people have about what you can accomplish for them or the type of work that you do that you help them overcome?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when it comes to lawyers and what we do, we largely don't make up what is happening or what has happened. We just have to kind of work with what has happened or is happening and try to in the best way we can for our clients, not just to enable them to be successful, but oftentimes it's to offset and mitigate their risk, their exposure. So, we can't we can't lie to courts. We do not lie to judges, but we can be really artful and be strategic in spinning things in a very creative way to minimize exposure. What we cannot do, however, is do anything that's, I'm going to use the word frivolous. It's a very legal term, but we can try to advocate for things that are a little out there in terms of trying to be novel and be creative, but we can't do things that are just plain. No, there is no cognizable way under any realistic, in the scope of the universe that we're going to put something forth. And when clients want us to do that, and when we tell them we can't, and we explain to them why, they end up not liking it and then trying to find another lawyer who is willing to take that professional and ethical risk. So, which is okay. I'm okay with that. But
they want a certain answer. They're just looking for support on that, or from someone to tell them that they can pursue that.
Yeah, we can't. Look, we're realistic behind closed doors with our clients. We're very candid with them in a very tactful way. But out when the doors are open and we're out on the ground, in the line of fire, we advocate. But if they're just seeking validation, even though sometimes clients ask us for that, they're like, just tell me what I want to hear. I'm like, no, that is not my job, sir. Like, no, sir, or no, ma'am.
Yeah, because it's not going to be good for you anyway. Okay, so let's jump into some of your areas of expertise. So why is it often necessary for people to have representation when considering a divorce? I mean, because some people are like, well, we don't have a lot of stuff and we kind of agreed on in principle. So, we don't really need to hire someone. So why is that often necessary?
So you often, as a person who's going through a divorce, you don't know what you don't know. It's not about just purely dividing your stuff. It's also not understanding what the other side's stuff is and what your right to it might be. You still might agree to waive it, but at least you might have debts the other side may be responsible for. As long as you know that the other side may be responsible for it, you may still be okay with waiving it, but at least you'll know. There may be support obligations that you may have that may, at least you should have some insight on, or some right to support that you may have that you didn't know about before our conversation. And, from there, how do you determine the right amount of support as well as the duration of that support obligation? All of that will be impactful and is important for an attorney to educate you on. And we didn't even touch upon child issues.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that you don't necessarily know about until you get a lawyer. And if you try to, I can tell you many, many, many times, people who try to put together like a back of the napkin kind of settlement, when something goes awry, they pay a lot more in lawyer fees to fix it than they would have paid if they just did it right the first time. So
they did some planning in advance. Well, and how many times has this happened to you where maybe a potential client comes in and they're like, all right, I spent all last night on the internet and I looked all this stuff up and, I got a couple questions, but I think I've got it all figured out. And, then they just want you to kind of validate or to say, yeah, you really are smart.
It's very often, and look, it's not necessarily, it's not rocket science, right? It's very discretionary, and you don't necessarily know how judges will balance everything when, push comes to shove and the presentation is made, and you don't know the right way to present it to begin with.
Right.
So high level, like looking up the law is easy, but, putting pen to paper, you can read about how to perform a surgery, but, try to, put the scalpel on someone.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I just was talking about this with someone else previously where there's an infinite amount of knowledge, but it's the implementation of that in the right way. It's the wisdom part, and having that experience is what's lacking, where you just described the outcome you might think could be bad and it cost you more money in the long run to correct that or fix it than if you would use someone who understands all that and can apply their wisdom into a situation to prevent that.
Execution is everything.
Yeah. Okay. So I noticed on your website that you also have a specialty with complex divorces. All right. So in your opinion, what makes the divorce complex, maybe from an asset standpoint, and what unique problems occur when you're dealing with a high net worth divorce situation?
Sure. And, complex is a very loaded term. It's a very vague term.
Yeah.
For assets, you have to identify the asset, you have to value the asset, and then you have to distribute the asset. So identifying the asset, usually everyone is pretty candid in terms of disclosing what they have. That's really the point. That's the way divorce litigation and generally all litigation is designed. It's not supposed to be a poker game where you keep everything to your chest. You're supposed to show everyone cards, but that doesn't always happen.
Right.
And being able to sift through documents, sift through records to identify where money is going, and if it goes in a direction that doesn't make sense or it's not adding up, the weight and the ability to probe further and to employ the requisite investigatory kind of techniques, and it's called discovery techniques, to disclose what may be elsewhere is really, really important. If you don't identify an asset, the asset can't be divided.
Right.
Then you have to value the asset. Not all assets are like homes where you can just get an appraisal or a comparative market analysis. Absolutely not. This is not like a car where you can just look at a Kelley Blue Book value. How do you value someone's share of a medical practice? How do you value a share of a multi-member professional practice that isn't sold on the stock market? How do you value a minority stakes versus majority stakes? Believe it or not, if a company is worth $1 million, 40% of that company isn't necessarily worth $400,000. How do you value those things? And then on top of that, distributing it. It's not necessarily 50-50. In some states, like California is a community property state. All assets are divided 50-50. It's really simple. But in New Jersey, it's called an equitable distribution state. It's not necessarily 50-50. And everything can impact the division of all assets, including that one particular asset. It may be 60-40. It may be 100-0. It doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50. It often is, but it doesn't have to be. So that's what really get important.
So what do you generally find clients are most concerned with when they go through like a divorce ordeal? I mean, some common things. I mean, there's the emotional part, and I'm sure you have to manage their expectations and their emotions. So how have you found the kind of the best way to help guide them through that process? Because it is an emotional thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it kind of comes with the territory. It's beyond our pay grade. I mean, but, we absolutely have to deal with it. We deal with sometimes those communications where, it's the holidays and someone is lonely for the first time in many, many years.
Yeah.
They deal with situations where they are not necessarily with their children for the first time in their entire lives. But in terms of the more substantive things that have to be dealt with, it's the most important thing, generally, at least my perspective of it, is children. I mean, money, people can always make more money. People can always save money. Money is not something that you will never see again, but with time with your children, you can't get that back. You can't say, I'm going to miss the first 4 years of my child's life and try to make up for it, the next 14 years. It doesn't work. Right. So, when it comes to time, that is what I try to emphasize is most important. And maybe I'm projecting a little bit because personally that would be most important to me. But that's what I try to, try to judge people, to allocate people's values towards that direction.
Yeah. Well, that's well said, because you can't always make more money, but like you said, you can't get the time back and the relationships. Those are the top thing. Okay. So switching topics just a little bit, Raj, well, actually quite a bit. I know that you also have some expertise around foreclosures and real estate dealings. So maybe just talk to us first about, this was a big thing after the financial crisis, short sales, foreclosures, things of that nature. But those things do still go on, and more interest rates are going to start rising. And if people have adjustable mortgages and stuff, you could see maybe a rise in those types of things. So let's just start basically on a high level with the definition of kind of what a foreclosure is and what the process is of foreclosure.
Sure. And, it actually ties in wonderfully with divorce because, a lot of times real estate matters have to be dealt with in a divorce, including, and foreclosure oftentimes causes a divorce, believe it or not. A foreclosure in New Jersey is a court action. It's something you have to, as a lender, you have to effectuate in court. There's a process for it, and it really is not necessarily where the bank takes your house. It forecloses your right to redeem your mortgage, to pay off your mortgage. At the end of the foreclosure case, it's a whole big lawsuit. There's a whole bunch of procedures involved. But at the end, after the judgment of foreclosure is entered, when a judgment is entered, that means the case is over. Someone won, someone lost.
Yeah.
Judgment of foreclosure means the bank won or the foreclosing lender won. The next step is what's called the sheriff's sale. Just like in a criminal matter, if you're found guilty by a jury, there's another step. It's called sentencing. How long are you going to spend in prison or jail? What are your fines going to be, et cetera? for foreclosure, the next step is a sheriff's sale. This is where the sheriff in the county where the property is located auctions off your property to the highest bidder at least at what's called a minimum price, at an upset price. If the property is purchased, then the bidder gets title to the property. The prior owner, that's when they lose title to the property. It doesn't go to the bank. But if nobody bids, or if nobody bids enough to reach the upset price, then the foreclosing lender gets the deed to the property, and the foreclosing lender at that point becomes the owner of the property. That's in a nutshell.
Then they can sell it from there if they wanted to do that, the lender or the bank.
They typically do.
Yeah. I know during the financial crisis, the lenders or the banks were the owners of a lot of those properties, especially like down here in Florida. So you were buying it from them. Okay. So what options then would people have to avoid this? Because there's some things you can do, some steps you can take, or some tactics to maybe avoid having to go that far. So what are those on a high level?
Sure. From at least the ones that exist now, I'll just touch upon really briefly what used to happen, what used to be. When Obama was in office, there were some special federal programs that enabled people to effectuate short sales in ways that were a little unorthodox. And the rationale on the back end is because the federal government was compensating the banks for a lot of their losses. So banks were completely okay with effectuating short sales. Aggressive. Those went away with President Trump, and they're still not here with President Biden. So if you're in foreclosure, you have to try to prevent it. There's a number of ways. Number one is what's called a short sale. A short sale, when it comes to stocks, is something different than when it comes to real estate. Short sale when it comes to real estate means you are selling the property for less than the amount owing to pay off all liens and mortgages. So if your mortgage is $500,000 and your property is only worth $400,000, the bank has to essentially take less than what is owing in order to approve the sale and to remove their lien. The issues with that is you number one, have to get the bank to agree that $400,000 is the value of the property. Number two, the bank has to agree to accept the $400,000, let's just hypothetically say, payoff for the property. And then number three, you have to be mindful that the difference between the outstanding mortgage and how much the bank accepted, now that's treated to you as taxable income. So if you sell your property for $100,000 short, the IRS under the tax laws treats that $100,000 shortfall as income to you, and you're going to have to claim it on your tax returns as if you received it, and you're going to pay taxes as if you made $100,000 more than you usually did. Yeah, that's one option. The other option is what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. This basically is where you agree to transfer title to the bank, and they agree to forego foreclosing on you. The bank has to, number one, accept that, and number two, the bank has to get clear title. If there are junior liens, in other words, if there's a second mortgage, or if there are judgments, you're not going to be able to convey clear title to the first bank, which means deed in lieu is out of the question. And there are loan modification options, there's forbearance options, but those are if you want to try to keep your property. Okay. But those are all different ways to mitigate or prevent foreclosure.
And was it true, Raj, that in our example where it was $500,000, you got the bank to agree to $400,000, you sell it, the $100,000 is taxable to you? Was it true previously under the different administrations that was waived, or that $100,000 in our example, people didn't actually have to pay income tax on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It used to be the law. There was a special law, the Mortgage Debt Relief Act, and it was for a number of years, but that stopped as well.
It's sunset, right?
But that only applied to primary residences. It didn't apply to second homes. It didn't apply to commercial properties or non-residential properties. But yes, that law did exist. It doesn't exist anymore, though. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so I'm curious, outside of your practice, if there's something that you're really passionate about personally. I noticed on your website that you were involved in something called is it the WAFA House or the WAFA House? So maybe you could tell us more about that. Sure. The WAFA House is something an organization I volunteered for. It is a domestic violence kind of and shelter group. It does a lot of social services for a lot of people, particularly women, particularly mothers in and around an urban area in Passaic County, New Jersey, around Paterson, New Jersey. I used to do one domestic violence trial per week for them. So that's how I ended up getting a lot of trial experience really, really fast by volunteering and doing good work, help people, usually women, get restraining orders against their abusers. That's what I did. I am also involved in a handful of nonprofits. I am a board member of the Council for American Islamic Relations in the New Jersey chapter. I am a board of advisors member of the Center for Security, Race, and Rights at Rutgers Law School. So I do those things, just as a way to kind of give back and share my perspective.
Nice campus, Rutgers, too.
Yeah, it's Rutgers Law School is in Newark, though. I don't know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's not where the main college is.
Oh, no. I went to college there in New Brunswick, but yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So we're getting close to the end. I'm curious, what do you kind of see going forward as the biggest opportunity for the future of your practice? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I mean, we just hired our fifth attorney on top of me, so there's 6 of us now. It's really scaling it and growing it from a geographic standpoint. We're trying to get out of, we're really saturated in central New Jersey. Okay. We have some good footprints in North and South Jersey as well. We're trying to kind of expand and, get our footprints in there as well. In addition, we're trying to carefully expand practice areas. Mm-hmm. That's how we develop like criminal defense practice. We have the residential real estate and the commercial real estate and foreclosure practice. So we have a handful of practices, but adding it strategically is the next goal. But that's easier said than done as well. We're working on it.
Well, all good problems to have. So maybe on the flip side of that, and along those same lines, what do you kind of view, being the visionary of your practice, what do you view as maybe the biggest challenge or obstacle that is facing the practice that is yet to be overcome?
I think, when it comes to the practice itself, there's always a lot of lawyers. There's a ton of lawyers in New Jersey. I mean, outside of like Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, New Jersey has the most lawyers. So technically, conceptually, you would think there's more competition. But, there's not a lot of lawyers who litigate, and there's not a lot of lawyers who litigate on a high level. So, it's kind of continuously educating our potential clients, the public, our consumers, as to what we do and how we're different. And that's an ongoing process. It's not just, sending a message out to the stars and, keeping our fingers crossed. Absolutely. It's a repetitive process. And, if the firm is going to continue, it's going to be, maintaining that ongoing marketing, that ongoing public education and communication. Yeah.
It's almost, the ways that you potentially can differentiate. And it's almost picking those lanes that you're really good at driving in. And then the people that are in the need of those kinds of services, having them find you first as the expert in that area. That's very similar to kind of our industry in terms of how we can build a practice, or even I think of medical doctors where they pick a specialty.
Yeah, it's transferable. I mean, marketing, the principles of marketing, they're universal. It doesn't just apply to people who buy knickknacks or in the online.
Right.
Yeah, it's professionals.
Or widgets.
Right.
Okay, so if people want to learn more about you or your practice or your firm, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way, the easiest way, the quickest way is to go to our website, which is www.rajeh.com. That's RAJEH, S as in Sam, A-D as in David, EH.com. You'll see our bios. You'll see links to all of our attorney bios. You'll have easy access to contact us, whether it's by chat, whether it's by the contact us feature, the phone numbers on there, whatever you want. That's the easiest way to find us.
Okay. So everyone, please go to the website to check out Raj and his firm. And I want to thank you, Raj, for taking the time to be here with me today. It's been a true pleasure, very informative. And I want to thank everybody for listening and watching the Confident Retirement Podcast brought to you by LPF Advisors, where we are raising the retirement confidence of everyday people to another level, one show at a time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, listening, and watching. And Raj, again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yep. Everybody be well and be safe. Take care. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Confident Retirement Podcast with Chris and Mark from LPF Advisors. For more information on them and retiring confidently, please visit lpfadvisors.com. If your ears are pleased and your mind is now at ease, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.